Hi, my name is Mo Willen, and the theme of my presentation today is on brand management. And we will start by asking the very important question to managers and marketers of organizations today and tomorrow. Are you in the business of selling products, or are you in the business of selling brands? It is hoped that by the end of this lecture, you should be able to answer that question. As far as the outcomes are concerned, we will try to look at or to get a deeper understanding into the importance of branding as a marketing tool that can be used by organizations in order to satisfy their marketing objectives. And the second outcome of this presentation, we hope that by the end of this presentation, you will be able to assess and evaluate the very important impact that brands can have as a basis for developing competitive advantages for organizations. We start by asking the question, what is a brand? The concept of branding is so often misconstrued by many people to mean a name, McDonald's. It could be a symbol, Nike swoosh. It could be a slogan, Every Little Helps by Tesco, that identifies and differentiates the company's offerings from those of competitors. In as much as this is true, from a marketing perspective, a brand is more than just a sign, a symbol, or a logo. In fact, what we say in marketing is this: brands stretch beyond the physical into the emotional and are extremely powerful. We need to dissect the different elements of this statement in order to gain more meaningful insights into what actually constitutes a brand. The first element of that statement is that brands stretch beyond the physical. What this implies is this: when consumers buy a product, they don't just buy it because of its physical properties, but also because of the emotional aspects of the brand that they're able to connect with. If we look at brands like the Harley Davidson, it is not sold just as being a big motor bicycle, but the basis for differentiation of that brand is the emotional benefits that consumers can gain as a result of owning a Harley. For example, the emotional attachments of a Harley bike includes independence, freedom, free spirit, and these different emotional connotations are often what sets Harley apart from competing brands like Honda or Kawasaki, for example, which provide similar products. The second aspect of this statement, that brands stretch beyond the physical into the psychological aspect of this statement means that whenever a brand name is mentioned, consumers have attributes, both physical and sensory cues, that they are able to relate to this brand. And it is these brand perceptions that ultimately affect or influence consumers' buying behavior towards the product. We know that if these perceptions are positive, then the buying behavior will be positive, and vice versa. The last aspect of this statement, that brands stretch beyond the physical into the psychological and are very powerful, is that brands are very powerful. And marketers have been able to leverage brands in order to create consumer loyalty. If we look at it from the perspective of football clubs, for example, we see how very, very loyal people could be to these brands. We know from facts that, for example, football fans, they cry when their teams lose. When Apple, for example, launched their mobile phones for the first time in the UK, people sleep 2 nights in the winter outside the stores in Oxford Street in order to buy the product. Now you tell me if that is not loyalty and that brands are very powerful. It is also important that we understand the deeper facets or elements that make up a brand. One of the leading authorities on brand management is called Arca. And he found out that brands are made up of 6 different attributes or elements or facets. And it is these facets that actually ultimately drive consumers' perceptions of the brand. One of these elements of the brand is called values. Brand values represent the aspects of the brand that the manufacturers hold very dear, that are extremely important to the brand. Putting into perspective, if we look at brands like The Body Shop, their values are against animal testing. If we look at brands like the Coop in the UK, as a bank, they don't invest their resources into countries that are run by dictators or in countries that have poor human records. These are the brand values that they want people to believe in. Brands also have benefits. Volvo, as a brand, is not just a car, but the benefit is what these manufacturers of the car try to sell to consumers. For example, Volvo is very safe. Brands also have attributes. These are the associations that comes to consumers' mind whenever the brand name is mentioned. Brands also have cultures, just like people. If you look at Apple as a brand, the culture is innovation. And brands also have personalities, just like me and you. People could be introverted, extroverted, and so on. Same can be said about brands. Fanta, as a brand, stands for fun. It's for people whose personality is fun-loving. Brands also have what we call users. What this implies is that from the perspective of manufacturers, they must have in mind who the brand or who the target market is, so that these people can better connect and resonate with the brand. Putting it into perspective again, there's a bank in England called Coutts, and the user of the brand are high net worth individuals. From these different elements, we can see that a brand is not just a product, but that it is made up of different elements. And ultimately, the duty of a marketer is to ensure that these different brand elements are well communicated to the consumers so that they can position the brand very positively in their minds. And we have to emphasize that ultimately it is these brand perceptions that will influence how people or consumers behave towards your brand. So, we can say this. The job of a marketer today, it is not just about creating a product. That can be done very easily. But the difficult part is creating a brand. And this brand does not only symbolize the physical properties of the brand, but more so the emotional aspects that can be connected with the brand. And therefore, in building a brand, we need to ensure that the brand is able to identify and connect with the needs of consumers so that they can resonate with the brand. Also, we have to remember that with the intensity of competition in the marketplace today, consumers sometimes are exposed to so many different brands. And sometimes the mistake can be made that consumers might have the wrong brand perception or the wrong brand image about a company's products or services. The challenge to marketers is this. We should not normally allow consumers to form their own perceptions of the brand. But our job is to make sure that we transmit the right messages so that how consumers perceive the brand is actually in relation to how the organization wants them to perceive the brand. We put this statement into perspective. There's a well-known brand in England called Lucozade. When it was launched in Africa, for example, the slogan was Lucozade for energy, full stop. However, people misrepresented this statement to mean that Lucozade is for people who are sick and need energy. Therefore, people normally buy this product, Lucozade, when they visit relatives or friends in hospitals who are sick. And that really affected the company's sales performance. So they had to reposition the brand that being an energy drink means that whether you're sick or healthy, you can still consume the brand. So this is a common mistake that can happen with developing brands, that how consumers perceive the brand ultimately is the task of marketers. And we should not leave it entirely to consumers to make their own minds about how they perceive the brand. We now come to the very important issue of, therefore, how do we go about building a brand? This is one of the most difficult challenges facing marketers today. In building a brand from within the company, we must ensure that we look at all these different aspects or factors that are extremely crucial in building a brand. We need to first decide on how do we want the brand to be positioned in consumers' mind. In building the brand, we should think about the long term, meaning that it takes time to build brand. We should also ensure that the brand stands for something that is meaningful in consumers' minds. And also, it is absolutely crucial that in building brands, we ensure that whatever the brand stands for is well communicated to our target market in the way that we want them to perceive the brand. So well-blended communication are an important consideration in building brands. And of course, brands must be credible. Whatever the brand promise is, we must ensure that when consumers interact with the brand, those very things, the very promise that was given about the brand is fulfilled. However, to make a brand successful, we must be able to identify the potential threats to the brand so that we can mitigate them. And among the threats to a brand can be mentioned competition. Competition is a fact of business life today, especially in this part of the world where there are no monopolies. So therefore, competition cannot be avoided, but what we need to emphasize our marketing efforts is that we create such a strong, distinct brand so that when competitors come in, they will not be able to affect the brand as much as possible. We also need to think about intellectual properties. Another threat to a brand is intellectual property rights. The signs, symbols, logos of a brand must be protected from copyrights. Otherwise, fakes might be produced which might ultimately be confusing in the minds of consumers, particularly in relation to quality. And also another potential threat to a brand is the use of generic names, which implies that sometimes consumers misinterpret and misrepresent the brand with what it actually does. For example, Hoover or Xerox in India is taken to mean photocopying, whereas what Xerox means is a provider of office solutions in terms of the machines. So all these threats to a brand needs to be understood and as much as possible needs to be mitigated so that ultimately it does not affect people's perception of the brand. Therefore, we have now come to appreciate that brands are not just physical goods that we sell, but they go beyond that. In fact, what we say in marketing is this: people do not buy products, but they buy brands. Now you make up your mind about that statement. Thank you very much.